Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. My name is Keith Pascal, UCMDB Worldwide Support Lead. Today we're going to be doing a demo. The first one that we will do will be from an existing view in the CMS UI, and then from map view in the CMS UI, and then creating a brand new view in the CMS UI. And then we'll cover debugging in Chrome. So let's go ahead and get started with our first demonstration. So I'm logged into the CMS UI, and I want to do this with an existing view. So to do that, I'm going to click on the hamburger icon for the CMS modules and go to Resource Manager. In Resource Manager, I can pick from queries, views, or models. And the view that I'll use is Keith Windows. And let's open that in Query Designer. In Query Designer, I can calculate this just to make sure that it has some results in it. It's what I want to see. And we'll go ahead and I'll leave the layout the same. Here's the policy section. I created a policy earlier called nodes need more than 8 GB RAM. I'll use that policy, and that lets this light up here. And then I will say Windows with more than 8 GB RAM. And I will click this Create Compliance widget and click Finish. Once I do that, it opens the Add Widget window. And you always want to have a description in here. And I'm going to click Save. And here is my Windows with more than 8 gigabytes of RAM. And if I mouse over the information, it gives me the description. You can see that what I've got here is 18 that are compliant and 2 that are not compliant. That is creating a compliance widget from an existing view. The second way to create a compliance view is from a map view. From the CMS UI homepage, the way to create from a map view is to click on the hamburger icon or the menu, and we'll go back to Resource Manager. In Resource Manager, you can select Query, View, and Model. I'll select View again, and we'll go back down to the same view, which was Keith Windows. And this time, in the menu for Keith Windows, instead of opening it in Query Designer, I'm going to execute it. I execute the view, and now I can see all of those CIs. If I click on the ellipses here, it gives me drop-down lists. The last one is for policies. So I'll click on the policy, and I want to add a baseline policy. And once again, we'll use the nodes need more than 8 GB RAM, and I'm going to apply that. This is now my output. I have 18 that are compliant, 2 that are not compliant, and none that are not applicable. Now I can click Save and then give this a name, new 8 GB RAM, and save that compliance view. Now the compliance view is saved successfully. So what I can do is go to the home page, add a widget, and this is a report. I'm going to give it a title and a description. And the report was the new 8 GB RAM report that we just created. And I'll click Save. And now you can see that it has created this 8 GB compliance widget, which has the exact same data as the one we did in step 1 of the demo. Next up, we'll be looking at this from a brand new view. This is a little bit more complicated. To create a new view and a new policy, we can do this from the home page. You click on the CMS modules hamburger icon, and you can go directly into Query Designer. And then let's create a report. Again, what I want to do is add some CI. I'm going to add Windows and click the plus icon to add it to the map. So I'm interested in Windows CIs. In the layout, I've got global ID and display label, but it would be helpful to see the memory size as well. And I can group by attribute, which means if I want to group all of the different types of Windows systems together, I can do that. So let's say discovered OS name is going to be the attribute that I will group by. And now I will save the query as Windows by discovered OS name. I'll click the save icon, and now I get the opportunity to apply a policy. In this case, I'm going to create a policy. When I click create a policy, it throws me into another query designer. And here I can type the CI type that I want, add that, and then I have to really think about what it is that I want my compliance widget to do. In this case, I'm going to add a condition, and my condition is that the discovered OS name is not like percent 2012%. So I do not want Windows 2012. That's my policy. I'll click next. Not Windows 2012 is going to be the name of this, and I will save it. I get the green bar saying that it was successful. I click exit, and now I'm thrown back into the previous view. And if I scroll down, not Windows 2012 is already selected. So I can click next, type a name, not 2012, and I'll create a compliance widget for that and click finish. Now it brings this up. I will type in a short description and save my widget. You can see that 6 of them are Windows 2012 or 14 or not. We could click into here and verify this with looking at the compliant and the non-compliant CIs. Here are our compliant CIs. Here are our non-compliant CIs. In fact, this one, discovered OS name, Windows 2012 R2, 2012, 2012 R2. So we can see the discovered OS name is Windows 2012 for all of these. And it matches 2012 as well as 2012 R2 because I have a percent on the front and the back. That is how to create a compliance widget from a new view. Next up, we'll take a look at debugging in Chrome. So here we are in the CMS UI, and to demonstrate this particular troubleshooting method, what we're going to do is use the REST API reference. So you just click on the question mark and then go to REST API reference. Now there's a couple of calls that you need to know. For example, the authenticate call. The authenticate call has a request body, and it will come back with some authorization or bad authorization, like unauthorized, depending on the state of that user. The other thing we want to do is let's look at a change report. So if I look up the reports here, we'll go down to this change report, and we'll do it based on a view name. We'll generate the view results for this given view name. And let's go ahead and try this out. Now, a view name that exists on almost every UCMDB server is all my Windows servers. And so let's go ahead and try this out. It does have parameters. It does not have a body. And this is a GET request, so that makes sense. This parameter here is the include, whatever attributes you want to include. I'm going to actually use all of them to make it a little more broad. The date from and to is a 64-bit integer based on epoch time. So it's the time since January 1st, 1970, but this is in milliseconds. So you need to multiply whatever you might get back from time by 1,000. And let's start with the index of the first item to be displayed and how many page sizes that we've got. So let's go ahead and execute this query. When we execute this, we see that the following error has occurred. Something went wrong. It's not a very clear error as far as what might be going on. So what we can do is hit F12 here. F12 opens up the debugging console, and make sure you're on the network tab. And then let's go ahead and just re-execute this. And we'll look at the method that we get. And you can see here it's red, so that means that there was something wrong with it. It's a bad request. But you can see the URL that we were requesting, and there is no payload, but there are parameters that we're actually passing. You can see those parameters in the request URL. And in this particular response, we get basically the same response here that we got on the user interface. So let's check that server and let's see what it says about that particular error. So on the server, we're going to look at the REST API log and the error log. And you can see the bottom error right here is it failed to process the request for this view change report. The specified start date is more than 3 months in the past. So it appears that our timestamp was a little bit too far back in the past. And that's the default timestamp that's generated here. We can go and try this in Python itself. So in Python, if I import time, then I can say current time is equal to time.time times 1,000. Now the reason I multiply it by 1,000 is UCMDB is using a 64-bit integer, which is the number of milliseconds since January 1st, 1970. And by default, time is just the number of seconds since 1970. So we need to multiply it by 1,000 to get the number of milliseconds. So what I can do is I can go ahead and print current time. And you see it kind of displays it as an exponential display. We can format that a little bit better to actually see what the value is. And here is our current time value. So now we want to get a from time, right? Because you have to have a start and end. And so our from time, what we're going to do is we'll say from time equals current time minus 1,000 for the milliseconds times 60, because there's 60 seconds in a minute, times 60 because there's 60 minutes in an hour, times 24 because there's 24 hours in a day, times 3. Let's go back 3 days. And then if I run that same kind of a format command, I'll be able to see on the from time, what that looks like. All right, so now this looks okay. So I'm going to take my current time and let's put that, let's click this try it out button. Let's put that here. And then I'll grab my from time and let's put that here. And now let's execute this command. And we see we get some results back, right? We actually, there's no results in the view, but it didn't return an error. So we're good as far as what it is that we're getting from the server. So that's okay. Now we can use this command here, if we take a look at the headers, to see what kind of parameters we have. Because if you recall, these are all parameters, and parameters are just basically your URL and then a question mark and then parameter name and equal sign and a value, and a parameter name and an ampersand and then a parameter name and equal sign and a value, and so on and so forth. So I can copy this whole thing, right? So let's just copy that, and I will put that into a new file. So let's go back over to our change report script, and I'll add a new thing here, and I'll paste that. So this is my URL in order to generate that report, right? So what I can do is I'm going to have to define that report. So my URL starts with this HTTPS and then the server name, and then this UCMDB browser part is because we're running it from the CMS UI. If you're running it directly, not out of the Swagger, you just remove that UCMDB, and it runs REST API, report, change, view, and then you see all my Windows servers, the spaces have been changed. The spaces have been changed into a %20. That is a URL encoding. All right, so there's the view name, results question mark, filter equals type. This %3D is an equal sign, %3D, the %26 is attributes, %3D is description, name, and from. So let's go and take a look at what I have in here, which is filter equals type equals all, and attributes equals description, comma, name, and date from is the from timestamp, and date to is the to timestamp, and start at 1, page size of 100. So I've got all the attributes listed here. The one thing that is going to bother me is this part here, because remember, a parameter is a name and then an equal sign and then a value. Well, in this case, the value is type equals all and attributes equals description, comma, name. So we need to read this as, we need to encode that, right? So I'm going to copy that, and then we'll go up here and we'll define a new variable called URL filter. The way that we quote that is we're going to run URL lib dot quote. Paste there. So now that is going to be our filter. And so instead of passing this, I am going to end that, add this URL filter, and then I'm going to add ampersand date from and a string and the timestamp and a date to and a string and the timestamp and start. All right, so that should be okay. And then I'm going to check and see, let's run the request get to this URL. We'll see what status code we get, and we'll print that out. If there's some error, then we'll print some issue occurred. If there's an authentication problem, we'll print this. So let's go ahead and save that. And now, since we have been using the Chrome debugger, we actually can see the request that's being sent. So now we'll go ahead and run this. Enter the server name we're connecting to, the user, and then we're going to have to enter a view, all my Windows servers, and the number of days is 10. Then let's see what we get. So we do get some output for that, which is a change report. So I was able to use the Chrome debugger to look up the exact types of URL that I want to send and modify it to make sure that it worked okay from my script. And that is a good example of using the debug console in Chrome to go ahead and do some of that troubleshooting. Thank you for your time and have a great day.